A typical example of Harvey Penick's brevity, which I admire, was on page 28 when he had two excellent bits of advice contracted into barely two sentences, let alone paragraphs. So looking up was the first one, and he thought it the biggest alibi ever invented to explain a terrible shot. It's a good idea to say that because it is a very popular uh, recommendation to keep your eye on the ball, and an easy one to say if you top the ball. Now, what he pointed out is that usually the error has happened, and I think this is true of almost anything that you detect on the downswing. Very rarely is the error that you feel on the downswing and as you go through the ball what actually caused the problem. It's much earlier in the process, even as early as when you're standing to the ball. And so he pointed out that the best golfers in the world admitted that they really didn't see the ball at impact, including Ben Hogan, who said he lost it somewhere in his downswing. And if you look at probably pound for pound the best golfer of her generation, Annika Sorenstam, it was pretty evident that she wasn't looking at it when she went through the ball, and it didn't hurt her efforts. So the idea of keeping your eye on the ball, we presume is not that particularly helpful, but he says he used it to actually give somebody something to think about that wasn't going to cause them any harm. I do go a little farther. When I was playing well as a young man, I used to look at one dimple just inside the right edge of the ball from my perspective. And it did make sense that you look there, because if you look at the top of the ball, you're looking at a spot almost 2 inches above the ground, which tends, I think, to make your eye and brain think up is a good idea. And Harry Vardon, of course, 120 years ago, advocated looking at the grass for the last inch before you get to the ball. I actually find that more helpful for most of my clients. It's certainly the part of it brings the arc of the swing to a place that's more valuable. Now, on his second element on this wonderfully brief page, it was about hand position. It's actually relevant to what I was just saying. He thought that the left hand, viewed from where you're looking at me, would be in front of the left thigh. The inside edge of the left thigh. Well, in other words, slightly ahead of the club face, but not with the driver. He thought with the driver it should be in front of your belt buckle. And there is a problem with that. He thought that was beneficial because it would then guarantee you hit the ball on the upstroke, which of course is ideal with a driver. When, however, you put the hands pointing more at your middle, remember the driver has the ball farther to the left than any other club in the bag. And the tendency under those conditions is that the club will appear slightly closed. And of course, that puts pressure on one to put the hands ahead again just to square up the club. So if you put the club by the ball in front of your left foot and then the shaft pointing at your middle, it's important to bring your left shoulder forward a half an inch or so to cure that tendency for the club face to look a little closed. And so the hands would end up in the right place, but you wouldn't then have this contradiction about the club face orientation. So brilliant, as always, from Harvey Penick.